Well, hey there, America. What's up, America? It's Thanksgiving weekend. I'm going to talk in this voice right here because it's all about. Wait, I should use that voice during like 4th of July, huh? That's really what it's all about, America. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. How was your Thanksgiving, Marshall?
It was just fine. It was quiet and it was very nice. Thank you. How was yours?
You know what? I get to have two Thanksgivings. Ever since I got married, we have one Thanksgiving with my wife's family and one Thanksgiving with my family. So it works out pretty good. So I get double the food.
Well, there you go.
We just don't have it. We don't really have a place. We can kind of bring everybody together at our house, but it gets really tough. So it's just kind of hard to get everybody together in one place. So we get everybody on Jennifer's side of the family at one place, and then we all go to my mom's house and try to cram 12 people around a table in my mom's small living room. It's a lot of fun. It really is. Actually, I was able to go back and look at a bunch of pictures. Pulled up a bunch of old pictures. I was trying to find a specific picture of my dad, and we ended up going through a bunch of photo books and just found all of these great pictures. And being able, it's really cool. My brother's older son is like 14 now, and he's kind of at that age where seeing pictures of his dad, seeing pictures of his uncle and his aunt and all of them when they were his age is suddenly like relevant. Like, try use an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old. They're like, okay, cool. But like, he's like, really? That's my dad when he was in cross country. I'm like, yeah, check it out. He's like, wow. I was like, oh, that's Aunt Dee. That's what she looked like. Is really cool. Kind of a fun little thing to see a person kind of discover those things about his family and his parents and stuff like that. It was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, so rated my mom's picture albums, and then found a bunch of old pictures.
Always fun to do that. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I remember eating at the kids' table, which was in the garage all the time with the car running. But
Oh, we didn't do that. It just makes them mellow. Just you got to watch the time. It's like they've been out there too long. It's gonna be a little. They come back. It's like, yeah. I kind of sometimes I preferred the kids' table even nowadays.
Yeah.
So, do any shopping on Friday?
No. On Saturday, I went to Santa Barbara and I spammed out your Yoda picture in the Apple Store.
Ah, yeah. See, I went.
You need to drop that in the comments so it will go viral.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'll try to figure out how to do that. Yeah. Basically, we went to go see a movie. We went to go see a movie at Maya, and like we looked earlier in the day, and the theater was empty. I'm like, I'm not going to spend nothing was sold. Like 2 seats were purchased. I'm like, I'm going to save money and save the whatever it is, $1.50 per ticket, convenience fee for ordering online. I said, we'll just go when we get there. We'll just buy the tickets when we get there. And we show up, and it was sold out. Like in the hour between when I looked at it and when we got there, like all the tickets sold out. People showed up, and we went to go see the movie, and it was sold out. And I'm like, I've got like 3 hours to kill before we go to my mom's house, and we're already halfway across town. Doesn't make sense to go back to our house. So it's like, hey, I got an idea. It's Black Friday. Let's go to the mall.
Well, there you go. I just posted a bunch of Yoda pictures.
Oh, is it mine?
Yeah, it's yours.
I'm not seeing it show up. Did you post it to the comments on
on here? It'll pop up in a bit,
okay.
Maybe or whatever, but it's in there. But anyway, that's
I went to the Apple store and drew a little baby Yoda. Every time I go to the Apple store, I go to the iPad and I get the pencil because I don't have one, and I just sketch and draw and stuff like that. And so yeah, put that on there.
You don't have the Apple Pencil?
I don't have the Apple Pencil. I haven't been able to afford. Haven't been able to. I'm sure I could afford to get it. Haven't. Wow, that's wrong on so many levels.
Oh yeah. Well, now we know what Scott wants for Christmas.
That's right. I need an iPad that can use it because my iPad is so old. The pencil doesn't work on it. So that was always the thing that kept me from it. Is like you can't. It's not just buying the pencil for $100. You got to buy the $1,000 iPad Pro so the pencil works. But now all the iPads work with the pencil. So now all you have to do is buy me a $300 iPad and a $100 pencil.
Well, there you go.
There you go. There's Christmas
Who
shopping.
spends just $300 on an iPad?
Right. There's
Yeah.
there's Christmas shopping for Scott done. In case you guys need to do that. That's that's
All
where
right.
it's at. So we want to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving. I mean, we were talking about our Thanksgivings a little bit, but kind of Thanksgiving in general. At least obviously as Americans, we think of Thanksgiving as this holiday, but it really is only an American holiday, right? Like,
No, they celebrate Thanksgiving in Canada as well,
okay.
and
Tell us, as the historian, Marshall, tell us a little bit about Thanksgiving, what we may know, what we may think we know, but what is actually true.
well, okay, so Thanksgiving kind of has this long tradition. There's Thanksgiving feasts going back to the beginning of recorded history. There's Thanksgivings in the Bible. Obviously, what we think of as Thanksgiving here in America was first kind of started by the Pilgrims, who sort of celebrated the first Thanksgiving after about half of them died, and they survived a tough winter. And so it was about 50 pilgrims and maybe 100 Native Americans,
Mm-hmm.
and they got together and they had sort of this first Thanksgiving feast. There were multiple Thanksgiving feasts that took place, especially in the several years after the first Thanksgiving. I don't know what was really on the menu. There's only a couple of accounts that have survived or that were even recorded, actually. And Yeah, Thanksgiving has sort of this political history in that George Washington declared a Thanksgiving. Congress kind of objected to it. They said that, uh, the First Amendment says we need to kind of leave this religious stuff alone. George Washington kind of went ahead and did it anyway.
How was it
Uh,
religious in that moment?
well, because
What was the decree? What made it
to
religious?
because you're giving thanks to God,
Okay,
obviously.
all right.
You
Well, I
know,
didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't.
yeah.
If I wanted to know specifically what it was.
hmm And so Jefferson, didn't order a Thanksgiving. There was no Thanksgiving during the Jefferson administration. Jefferson was largely secular. He was a secularist. There are debates over whether he was agnostic, deist, or atheist, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
he certainly wasn't necessarily a Christian, even though he did at times make references to God.
Yeah.
But it's not clear what he honestly believed. Nonetheless, um, you get to Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln declares a day of Thanksgiving during the height of the Civil War because he kind of wants to bring people together. And this kind of becomes a tradition following that. And it really kind of gets solidified by FDR, who well, actually, I think before FDR, it was kind of set in stone
Mm-hmm.
and became a regular holiday. But FDR is the one who set it. I think he set it like on the fourth Thursday in November and kind of fixed the date. And since then, it's kind of stayed that way. And it has
So it's a
become
socialist institution. Sorry. Anyway.
FDR. No, I don't know about that. I think it's very much an American holiday, and when I say American, it's about getting together with your family, giving some kind of thanks, particularly to God, and to basically gorging yourself on food. Um,
Well,
but
but what was it specifically like when it was set up to be the fourth Thursday of November, whatever like that? When it was decreed by government, in I'm just using that word in whatever way it means, but what was it? What was it established as? What was it? What did the official government thing that FDR put in there? What did it really say? Do you know, or what was
I'd
it
have to
about?
look it up. I don't
Okay,
know off the top of my head. But I would imagine that most of the historical decrees would probably give reference to God or to some sort of, obviously to what are you giving thanks? What are you thanking?
mm-hmm.
Are we thanking the people who are actually out there doing the work, bringing in the harvest, or are we thanking a supernatural deity? What are we thanking? Who are we thanking? And for most people, it's essentially God.
Yeah.
It's a distinctly Christian holiday here in the Americas, although of course that its Christian roots have faded. The issue I certainly have with the holiday is, of course, not so much the religious roots, but the fact that it's not necessarily an inclusive holiday. Certainly, Native Americans have a lot of issues with it,
Mm-hmm.
and frankly, this is an issue I have with most of our
I was
holidays.
gonna say, isn't every holiday somehow exclusive?
Isn't somebody offended by every holiday? Yeah, and,
And
and that's right.
is the fact that somebody's offended reason enough not to celebrate it?
Well, people are probably going to find anything to be offended over, but I really do think when it comes to a national holiday, And when we want to kind of get everybody together on the same page to celebrate something, we really do need to invite everyone to the table. It's just like actual Thanksgiving, right? You don't just invite, your friends or your relatives that agree with your politics. You invite the whole family. Diversity is kind of the name of the celebration. And so you invite the uncle that you only see once or twice a year, the other one who only talks about politics. You invite the aunt who's always got some MLM scheme going on. You invite the in-laws. You invite, the one with all the annoying kids. You invite all of these people and you bring them together around the table, and hopefully for an afternoon there's sort of this family truce without a lot of politics or arguing or annoyances, and
Or
you
opposite.
yeah, and you eat turkey and watch football and have a good time and pat each other
is
on the
that
back
is that is
take
that
them out
good or
the door.
bad? Isn't that kind of, I mean, isn't any holiday kind of doing that? Like any big bring the family together holiday, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, talk about the big three, isn't that kind of, wouldn't you call that an inclusive holiday? Isn't that kind of what's happening? Is that you're including everybody, you're getting everybody together, whether you're going to get along or not get along, everybody comes together. Isn't that kind of accomplishing being inclusive?
To one degree, it is, but you also have to recognize that these holidays are also occasions that they bring back trauma for other people. And again, Native Americans in particular, Indigenous Americans, look at holidays like Columbus Day and to a lesser extent Thanksgiving, but Columbus Day for them is the big one. And it's like, why are you celebrating what is essentially the beginning of a genocide of 100 million indigenous people with this holiday? And I think that's a valid point. I mean, it would be like
But that
feasting on
isn't
crystal knot,
but that isn't what we're celebrating.
But it
That
is.
isn't what's
It
being
is.
celebrated.
It is.
But you could make that claim about any and every celebration for whatever is going on.
Yeah, I think I have to pull this up. I have an old $5 bill
Mm-hmm.
from 1914, and the back side of the bill has on one side, and I'm pulling up the image so I can share it. It has Christopher Columbus on one side and the Pilgrims on the other.
Mm-hmm.
And this is it, but I kind of want to find a commercial because I'm a big coin and currency collector. Um, so it's this big, beautiful note. It's oversized. It's an oversized bill, but it's very clear what we're celebrating as a nation. When you look at this image, we're celebrating Columbus on one side and the Pilgrims on the other. But should we be celebrating these things when we consider the fact that these are the beginnings of some of the greatest genocides on planetary history? I'm going to put a link to it. I apologize for taking people off Facebook. It's a commercial link, I
Ah,
believe.
gotcha.
But I just want people to see the backside of this $5 bill.
But couldn't any celebration of discovery turn into, well, that discovery ultimately led to this genocide, so therefore that discovery is awful?
Well, Scott, this is something I want to think back to something that you say periodically,
Mm-hmm.
and this is sort of it's sort of relevant here. You often say that it's not enough to do something; you have to do the right thing.
Yes.
And I think it's like that with anything. There's ethics, right? Medical ethics. It's like, let's say you experiment on aborted fetuses, aborted babies or children, if you're Christian, if you want to refer to them as children. If you experiment on aborted children and you discover this breakthrough, this cure for Alzheimer's or dementia, do you then distribute the cure when the cure was predicated upon something that you would find inherently offensive,
Mm-hmm.
unethical? If the Nazis developed some sort of drug or medication or something that could be potentially life-saving, but they did the research in an ethical manner using human experimentation, uh, does that not taint that subsequent, the product of that? And I think that's the argument here, is that when we look at Thanksgiving or we look at Columbus Day or some of these other holidays that are associated with these tainted events, these human tragedies,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we need to reframe these holidays.
But
Maybe we need to do something
specifically,
different,
but
rebrand
s-
them, if nothing else.
but specifically, Thanksgiving is honoring the time that the Pilgrims and the Native Americans came together in peace. But
Well,
that moment, that moment was them working together. The moment that we're celebrating, the Thanksgiving moment that we're celebrating, is a moment that the two peoples came together. Is it not? Is that not?
okay, but then the subsequent
That's fine,
history
but the subsequent history
was absolutely horrible.
it
The
was
very
horrible.
same
I
people,
understand
the
that.
very same people.
Not the same people,
Yeah, the very
the
same
exact
people.
same people, or are you talking ancestors or the same types of people?
Yeah, no, the same people, and then their ancestors. Look, the Puritans engaged in killing Native Americans. Ultimately, there was obviously they both ended up clashing. At
Mm-hmm.
first, the Native Americans sort of felt sorry for these people. They had the luck, if you will, to end up in land where the population had been wiped out by disease. Um, the Squanto came to them or was sent to them. It's been so long since
Right, right.
I've recounted the story, but we all know about Squanto, who was a Native American who could actually speak English and was able to be an interpreter between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans. Now, of course, you might wonder, wait a minute, where did all the people go? Why were they no longer there? And why could Squanto speak English? Well, that's because there were already diseases burning through the Native American populations. And Squanto had been captured by Spanish explorers, travelers, slavers, whatever you want to call them, and had been taken as a slave to Spain. And then a Catholic priest purchased his freedom in Spain. He made his way to England, where he lived and worked for a time. He learned English and eventually came back to the Americas, and I'm pretty sure through the Jamestown colony,
Mm-hmm.
and then went back north to find his home, only to find that his entire village, all the people he knew and loved, had been wiped out by disease. And he was basically the last of that little tribe. And he was able to sort of liaise between the natives and the pilgrims, and before he died, then a year or two later from disease.
Okay.
So, this isn't necessarily a happy occasion. You can go to Native Americans and say, "But wait, why aren't you happy about this? They were cooperating with you," and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, no, they. It's sort of like, I don't know. It's like if you get out of a really bad relationship that lasted a really long time and it was horribly abusive, do you really feel like celebrating your first date, your anniversary, the day you met? Even, yeah, that was a good day and all, but look at all the days that came afterwards. They were absolutely terrible. You just don't
Well,
want to celebrate that.
let's go. Let's take that analogy further to where you have
Hmm.
a first date, have sex, get pregnant, have a long abusive relationship, and then break up. Do you still celebrate the birthday of your child, even though the child represents the first day and the first time you guys came together? Do you not still celebrate the child's birthday?
Well, yeah,
Wasn't
but
that a good thing that came
this
out of that bad situation? Can you not celebrate a good thing that came out of a bad situation?
I don't know what's good other than they all ate together. I don't even know if they ate at the same table, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
According to the Puritan, the Pilgrims, they didn't even have souls. I mean, killing Native Americans was not necessarily a sin because they were damned anyway. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
part of the elect. They weren't, saved individuals.
So
Uh,
taking this to the next logical step, Josh Gunderson posts. He says it could be described as the locals taking pity on a group of suffering immigrants.
yeah, there's that. Boy, was that a mistake, huh?
Well, is it? Should we not? Should you always
Of
repel?
course,
Should you
course
always
you should.
repel immigrants?
No,
Is
no.
that it was a good idea that the Native Americans took pity and helped the immigrants?
Yeah, I think that was a natural,
So isn't that
compassionate
something that
human reaction.
then can we
But
celebrate that compassion? Can we celebrate that compassionate reaction? Isn't that part of what we're celebrating as well?
Okay, so
Can you not celebrate the good? Are you unable to celebrate the good? Is it wrong to celebrate the good?
well, when you put
Even
it
though
all,
the outcome, even though there's an
yeah,
outcome that comes
yeah.
out bad, is it wrong to celebrate the good?
Yeah, I think so. When the preponderance of the weight is on the side of the bad, it's almost absurd. It's like emphasizing the wrong thing uh, to view the good. Well, there was this one good day. No, it was this terrible, horrible, abusive relationship. And no, there wasn't a child born of it that was actually, that wasn't even good. The nation that has been born of
Has
the
provided
first
the most
Thanksgiving.
good for all of the world.
On the
Ultimately,
contrary, on the
ultimately
contrary, on the
helped
contrary.
defeat the enemy of two wars.
No,
Not so much
actually,
in the first one.
that was the Soviets. We didn't even make it to Berlin until after the Germans surrendered. So no, we did not defeat the Nazis. Okay, so
The Soviets would not have either if there wasn't another front put up by the Americans.
oh no, they would have. Oh, I bet you they would have. I guarantee you they would have. There is no question about that.
The
The only
the so
question
so
was
the
were they
so
going to
so the
stop?
Soviets would have liberated France.
We were afraid that they were going to do just that. Actually, at the end of the war, we had supply dumps about every mile or so, all the way back to the ports in
Hold on,
France.
no. Is
We
that what
didn't know if the Soviets were going
we're
to stop.
right? Hold on. But that's not what I said. You're telling me that America was afraid that the Soviets would liberate France or conquer France?
Well, conquer from our
Okay,
perspective.
exactly. Did
Yeah.
America conquer France or liberate France?
Well, we liberated it from our perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. From their perspective too. They
Okay.
still speak French. They don't speak German. They don't speak American. They don't speak English. They don't speak Russian. They speak French. They have their French heritage because America came in there and fought a war for them and then walked away and said, "You have your land. You are France. You have your land." Is that not a greater good than what the Soviets would have done? Or were we afraid of the Soviets that they were going to liberate France, or were we afraid that the Soviets were going to conquer France?
Well,
What were we afraid of, Marshall?
I think we were afraid the Soviets were going to conquer France.
Right. And did America conquer France?
Well, you
Did
can
America
argue that
really
we've
right
conquered
now?
much of the world.
But did
Uh,
America conquer France? Did America conquer Belgium? Did America conquer Germany? Did America conquer Italy?
yeah, we tore up.
Did
Yeah,
we
yeah.
conquer them? Or are they not still Italy, France,
Well, the
Germany, Belgium?
United States
Are they
is
still
still
not their own country?
okay. The
Are,
United States is the world's foremost imperial power. We play the role that England did for the past 200 years, for the 17th and 18th centuries. We now in the 19th century.
except for the part that the country still exists in their sovereignty,
Yeah,
whereas they
well,
didn't.
nations that were screwed over by the British Empire still exist and today have sovereignty, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are somehow better off for it.
But
That doesn't
is
that they should celebrate
France
British
not better?
occupation.
Is France not better off for America's imperialism?
Well,
Is
we
France not
assume
better?
we don't know, but
Is
maybe we
Italy
should
not
ask.
better?
Well, anyway,
But
anyway,
that's what I'm saying is that the United States has been a much more positive influence on the world front than
okay.
a negative influence. So is that not a good child to celebrate? Is that not a good child to celebrate?
All across Western Europe does not excuse all of the other crap that our nation has done since then.
But it has done more
Not
good than
excuse.
bad.
You think so?
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
again, I don't know about that. We are an imperial power. We have literally what is it? Almost 1,000 military installations all around the globe. We have troops in nations that most people can't even find on a map, doing things that you and I don't even know what the hell we're doing there. We're defending this massive commercial empire. We're tearing up the environment. We're aligning ourselves with tin pot dictators. Remember, we were allied.
The environment.
We were
Hold
allied
on, hold on.
with
I'm going to
Saddam
stop you on that
Hussein.
one. The environment is under much more threat from nations like China and India than it is from America.
Okay, but that's in certain regions, but the United States is still doing part of it. And what do you think China and India are trying to do? They're trying to produce goods to sell to the United States. Who do you think buys all of the Chinese production? The United States does. Everything we have made in China. So we're the ones we're consuming. We're just consuming the whole planet. And I don't know that that's necessarily good. So when you say that, we should celebrate Thanksgiving because the United States has done all of this good in the world, I'm like, I don't know about that. And I
Eh,
certainly don't think there's any good in the world that's worth the genocide of 100 million indigenous people, plus however many millions of slaves that were also used to build this country. None of that's good. We may have got to a good place. I don't know that we are.
mhm.
But even if we are, we didn't get there the right way. We got to where we're at by unethical means. And that in and of itself is a reason to
Which
rebrand.
is really funny coming from you because ethics are whatever's popular at the moment. So it wasn't unethical when it happened, according to your rules.
It's always been unethical. Why do you
It
think
was
people
never. It wasn't.
think,
It wasn't
why
unethical at
why
that time. It
yes,
wasn't. It wasn't immoral
yeah,
at that time.
it's like slavery has always been unethical.
No,
Genocide is unethical.
you can't claim that.
Okay,
You
so the
you as
witness
an atheist,
unethical.
you as an atheist with relative moralism
Wow, really?
cannot claim that because at the time it was moral. That the society that you've always claimed, the society determines what's moral. The society at that time determined it was moral. So you really don't have any leg to stand on to say that something that somebody did in the past was immoral, because it
Oh,
wasn't immoral for them when they did it.
okay, so what does Scott say? What do you say about genocide and slavery? Do you think they're
Oh,
moral?
it's absolutely immoral.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah, I'm just saying you
Then,
can't make that
then,
argument.
then
That
you
that
make
that
the argument for me as you just did, and I'll just agree with you. And now let's move on. So now that we agree that these are horrible things,
But in order to do
not
that, you have to agree the source of morality is that my source of morality is true. You have to agree to that. If you're going to agree to my conclusion, if you're going to agree with it, then that means you're agreeing to my source of morality.
no,
Yes?
I think that's an entirely different debate topic for a different show, and I would love to have that discussion with you. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
but nonetheless, I want to stay on topic. So we want to stay on target here.
Yep.
And I want to say that do you not agree then that we need to rebrand these holidays or do something different because their origins are literally tainted?
See, here's the thing is that I'm kind of not the person to talk to about holidays anyway, because I'm not, how do I say this? I enjoy the holidays, but I'm not it's the holiday season type person. I mean, as a Christian, should I be celebrating Halloween?
It's a Christian holiday.
As a Christian, should I be celebrating Hallows Eve or whatever it is?
It's a Christian holiday.
What do you
It
mean
has
it's a Christian holiday?
It has strong Christian origins. In fact, it's only become secular probably since like the 20s. In the past century, has it become secularized and become what it is, associated with darkness and evil and scary things. But it actually has Christian roots. Technically, if you want to go all the way back, it starts with pagan Roman and Celtic pagan rites, which were literally rebranded by the Catholic Church in ancient times. And then for probably 1,500 years, for 15 centuries, it was a distinctly Christian holiday. And yes, you do have things like trick-or-treating where kids would dress up as saints or angels,
Mm-hmm.
and they would go door to door seeking alms and other things. And so there was nothing pagan, nothing scary about it. It wasn't about devils or any of the stuff that it is today. That didn't catch on until the United States, beginning sometime around the 1920s. And then in the 1950s, it had got so out of hand that in the 1950s we started to sort of rebrand it for children, to sort of pull back some of the mayhem, because Halloween became sort of an evening to do pranks
So,
and do mayhem.
so
Today
should
it's more
I
of a kids'
worry that
holiday.
should I worry that it got tainted at all?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, at some point it became something that was more associated with evil. If you're saying it originated in Christianity, but then got tainted at some point and be turned into something that's more dark and pagan, should since it's tainted, should I still be celebrating it now since it got tainted at some point?
What I would suggest you do as a Christian is you take back the holiday, or go back to the Christian roots and celebrate it as a Christian holiday. Now, as a Protestant, you don't believe in purgatory. So the spiritual basis for the holiday
So it
is
never
distinctly
was.
Catholic.
So it never was a Protestant Christian thing. It's always been wrong. So as a Protestant Christian non-Catholic, should I celebrate it?
So in this case,
Should
you
I
wouldn't-
partake?
Yeah, maybe not. or you could try to turn it into a religious occasion. Go back to some of its roots. But
Is
again,
it is
the
it
underlying
okay?
purpose of All Saints Eve is to, and there are Protestants who do celebrate it, by the way, in
Mm-hmm.
the Anglican and Lutheran rites. They do, in fact, still celebrate it because what you're celebrating on All Hallows Eve, a hallow is a saint. All Saints Evening, All Saints Day, November 1st, is the people who've actually gotten into heaven. So any soul that enters into heaven is technically a saint. And in a broader sense, all Christians are called as saints. There's sort of this
Mm-hmm.
they're living saints in a way. So there's two different kinds of saints, if you will. But All Saints Day, November 1st, celebrates those who have specifically made their way into heaven. So even as a Protestant, you can celebrate it, and there are some Protestants who celebrate it. All Souls Day on November 2nd is specific to the souls in purgatory, and I would not expect you to celebrate
I
that.
never even heard of that, actually. So All Hallows Eve is the day before All Saints Day.
Yes, that's what it means.
Gotcha. So
Just
it's
like Christmas
become,
Eve.
but it's become, at least for my kids in our house, and again, is it a big deal that, hey, we make costumes?
Mhm.
That's the day we make costumes, and it's basically a good excuse to go
Mhm.
cosplay.
Yeah, you've bought into the whole secular element of it, and all right, but the thing is, Halloween has never been rooted in the oppression of another culture or civilization.
Mhm.
It doesn't have a genocidal origin, but there
Again,
are
but
other
hold on, hold
holidays
on,
that
hold on,
do.
hold on. You and I established that Thanksgiving Day was not the origin. That what's being celebrated on Thanksgiving, you're trying to twist these two things here. What's being celebrated on Thanksgiving is the coming together of two cultures. Not. It's got tainted by what happened. It got tainted by what happened, but the celebration originally was about the coming together of the two cultures and one culture stepping in to help the other.
Okay, but there's an
Yes.
800-pound gorilla in the room.
Okay. But
There's an 800-pound gorilla
that's
in the
the one
room
that
that you're
tainted it.
ignoring.
No, I'm not ignoring. It got tainted by it. But you're saying that it was about the genocide, and it was not. It was not about the genocide. That's not what the celebration is about.
Well, of course, they're not celebrating the genocide, but the genocide's the natural product of all of that. So,
But that's like
again,
saying death is the natural product of somebody being born. Why even celebrate birthday when you know they're going to die?
but why should we focus in on the one good day and not pay any attention? Why should we focus on the one good day at the expense of the mere comprehension of what happened? Look, what happened with 100 million Native people dying in the century afterwards
Mm-hmm.
is massive, and that needs to be commemorated. And what day of the year do we commemorate that? We don't. We ignore it like it didn't happen, and instead, we commemorate. When Christopher Columbus hopped off a boat
How
in
would
the
you
middle of the
suggest we?
Caribbean.
How would you
We
suggest
we
we
celebrate.
commemorate that?
I don't know. We rebrand it. That's for sure. We rebrand it. We do away with the old. We rebrand it as something new. And frankly, I think the way to do it would be talk to the indigenous people, talk to the survivors of indigenous genocide, and ask them, what do you think we should do with this holiday? How can we rebrand it so that we have the emphasis on the right values, the right ethics, and a clear understanding of the history instead of focusing on this little teeny tiny, the one good day that they
Mm-hmm.
sort of seem to have had? Why don't we focus on the 100 million people who've been whitewashed out of our history and get no mention?
All right. Jackie was asking, said, should you, Scott, I'm assuming asking me, yeah, should you believe in dinosaurs, Scott, since that's not in the Bible? Should you partake in believing that they existed? And, well, I mean, the argument could be made that dinosaurs are actually mentioned in the Bible, but, talking about the Leviathan and the great sea monster and stuff like that could be referring to dinosaurs. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's not in the Bible,
Well,
but no.
I like her subsequent question. She asked, do we celebrate Hitler's birthday?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was born, right? That's very
Yep.
pro-life. He wasn't aborted. He wasn't miscarried. Why not celebrate Hitler's birthday? It's a good analogy, I feel, Scott.
I think it's incomplete in that there wasn't anything that happened. Like there was no specific event of, I believe that Thanksgiving represents the birth of the United States, as far as like that, if this colony had not been able to succeed and not survive, perhaps I don't know. There probably would have been some other colony that would have. Probably.
Well, there was already the Jamestown colony, which
Yeah.
survived, which was in 1605 or '07 or something like that. So yeah, the Puritans weren't the first people. The
Yeah.
Pilgrims weren't the first people to establish a permanent colony. There was already a permanent colony in Jamestown in Virginia. Um,
But this
you know,
one basically produced what eventually became the main colony, yes? Based out around Massachusetts?
it became Massachusetts colony.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there was a main colony. My own ancestors settled in Pennsylvania with the Quakers in the 17th century, so maybe 50 years after the Pilgrims. My
Whether
ancestors.
accurate or not, and that can be debated. I think basically what Thanksgiving is celebrating is that had they not survived, we wouldn't have the America that we have today. And I think that's the analogy, as inaccurate as it may be. That's the analogy that Thanksgiving is equated to. That it was that colony survived and eventually became the main colony of Massachusetts and the source of what America was. And I think that there's this idea that it was the birth of America. And since I espouse the idea that America was ultimately a good on the world, I would celebrate the birth of America because I believe that America ultimately was a force of good upon the world.
Whereas but we devoured the host.
Right, but
the egg
I
devoured the host,
and I understand that, and so I do not believe that ultimately Hitler was a force of good upon the world. And so I would not celebrate that. But I think that ultimately America was. And I think America has been proven to be.
That's very Machiavellian of you. That's the ends justify the means. That's not necessarily Christian ethics.
Well, no, the ends justify the means is an argument that's made while you're in the means before you get to the ends.
Mm-hmm.
That argument, the end justifies the means you are trying to justify what you are about to do because you're trying to get to a certain end. But is it not okay to be already at the end and look back and say, hey, ultimately there was ultimate good. We can still celebrate this ultimate good that came about, even though in the middle a bunch of bad still happened. Can we not look back from the future? Can we not look back from the present into the past and say an ultimate good did happen and we can still celebrate an ultimate good and not be Machiavellian about it? Because again, Machiavellian, the whole end justifies the means is about you trying to justify what you are currently doing now to say, I want to get to an ultimate good. It's a justifying the present to try to get to a future. But is it not different by being in the future? Can I not look back at my life and say, I know that bad decision was really bad and hurt me, it hurt this person. But if I had not made that bad decision, it wouldn't have got me to where I am now. Can I not look back at that and say, you know what? As bad as it was still produced an ultimate good. Can I not celebrate that?
Okay. How many people have to die before we don't outweigh this ultimate good? So, obviously to you, America has come away with some sort of, there's an ultimate good as you've referred to it. I've told you that to get to that ultimate good, it's cost us 100 million natives, indigenous lives. Mm-hmm. It's cost us at least, in the low tens of millions of enslaved persons. So how many, this is just sort of a thought experiment here, how many millions more indigenous people could we add to that bounce pan before it evens out? And well, maybe it's not worth it. 200 million, 210 million, 250 million, 300 million. At what point does the end of, hey, we have the United States no longer justify the path that we took to get to where we are today?
That's a very good question. I'm wondering.
Well, there's not an answer to it.
Right, but I'm wondering is there an answer to any of it? Can you even define indigenous?
Well, of course you can. Yeah, of course. Yeah, the people who are here, who lived in this nation prior to European contact and their descendants.
Right, but they weren't, because they happened to be here. So whoever was here before the immigrant comes in is the indigenous, or
yeah, they're native.
Are you indigenous to the United States, Marshall? Are you personally indigenous to the United States?
I'm not an indigenous Native American.
But are you indigenous? Are you indigenous to the United States?
It depends on how you use the word. Am I an American or California native?
So exactly, I just said, How do you can't really define indigenous? And you just said, yes, you can. Simple. And I said, so are you indigenous? And you answered, well, you can't really define indigenous. You literally just contradicted yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I was
Are you,
asking how are you defining indigenous, but
no, are you, Marshall, indigenous to the United States?
I'm an American native, but I'm not Native American. I'm not an indigenous First Nations person. No, I'm of European descent.
So
I
indigenous means what? Because the Native Americans weren't all from here. They all immigrated from somewhere else. They crossed over from somewhere else.
Yeah, if you go back 35,000 years, they
Yeah.
came over from Asia.
So
And we're not
but
entirely
then
sure on the timeline. We believe there's multiple waves of migrations, but they
right.
didn't necessarily take the land from any other people because there were no prior human inhabitants.
Right. So the Indian nations never warred with each other and never conquered each other.
They had disputes at times. Sure, they did.
So
But
did they war and conquer each other and eviscerate other Indian nations, other Native American nations? Did they have those wars?
I don't know the precise history of that.
But
I don't know.
were there wars between
Yes,
Native American
absolutely.
tribes?
Yep, there sure were. Yeah.
All right. So how is it you can say that tribe that was in that location when the Pilgrims arrived was the indigenous tribe?
Well,
How do you know they didn't conquer somebody else and take over that land? Or are they
Okay,
indigenous just before they were are you calling them indigenous just because they were there before the Europeans? And if that's the case, can you not call anybody? Are there indigenous Italians in Italy? Are there indigenous Germans in Germany? Are they indigenous or did they take over?
Yeah. Okay.
Are you indigenous? Are you indigenous to the United States because you were born
I
here?
don't know the Native American history well enough to answer whether or not the people who lived in Massachusetts when the Pilgrims arrived were the original native inhabitants or descendants of the original native inhabitants.
Exactly, but that doesn't stop you.
what
But
I
that
do
doesn't
know-
stop you from calling them indigenous.
That's right. And what I do know is that anytime one population of people sets out to exterminate another population of people, that's always wrong. It's always wrong. I think you would agree with that. So, regardless of who was there first, at what point the Europeans come in from the outside and they embark on a program of extermination, and then they begin to pull people from another continent and force them to labor here to build up their own wealth. I think that's all wrong. There's no benefit. There's no good to that. So you can say the United States is this amazing, strong, powerful, wonderful country. It's the garden of freedom and capitalism, whatever. Even if I grant all that, we still got there by some pretty questionable ethical means. And as a result, to me, I think we need to rebrand our holidays. Of course, that doesn't mean we've arrived. I still have a lot of issues with the status quo, have a lot of problems with how the nation is run today and how we treat people even today, including refugees and immigrants and minority populations and indigenous people who still don't even have, decent housing and other things that they should have. They're still stripped of their lands. Have all kinds of issues. Nonetheless, I think the path that we got from A to Z, and we're at Z now, we may have had a good day on day A, but when we got to day B, C, or 2, 3, whatever, there have been a lot of bad days in between. And I don't think we're going to resolve that with the status quo. We need to make some kind of change to these holidays, to how we celebrate them and what we commemorate with these holidays. I certainly don't think that dressing up kids as Fox Native Americans with paper headdresses,
It's pronounced faux.
Okay, whatever. Fox something to me. But I think we really need to listen to indigenous voices when it comes to questions like Columbus Day, Thanksgiving, and we really need to rebrand these holidays.
Ultimately, Robert Levine provided a definition of indigenous: originating or occurring naturally in a particular place. So since they did not occur naturally and instead migrated over here, really the only indigenous people who are people who still live in Africa.
Well, we're all immigrants.
Right, but I'm just saying,
including the European people.
Only people really who still live in Africa can really be called indigenous. right? Since science has shown that we all come from Africa.
And remember, America is built on grabbing millions of indigenous people from Africa then
Mm-hmm.
and bringing them here to build European American institutions. So
And we're maybe not the first, we're one of the first major nations that put that to an end, even though there are nations that still exist to this day that still participate in slavery.
we're one of the last. We're one of the last nations to outlaw slavery. One of the last. We banned the importation of slaves in 1808,
Mm-hmm.
and we ended it only after the American Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery. It only applied to those areas that were in rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until a constitutional amendment after the Civil War that slavery was actually outlawed.
Yep. So we did it.
Yeah, pretty late. Yeah. And we're pretty ashamed of it because, we knew it was wrong even when we were practicing it.
Well, most of the Christians did, yes.
Oh, no, there were Christians who were, participating full bore in slavery.
It wasn't the atheists that rose up against it.
Well, I don't know how many atheists there were back in that time, but
Well, this has been a valid answer with Scott and Marshall talking about Thanksgiving in America. And you can join us on Sundays at 5 o'clock in the future on search for a Valid Answer on Facebook, Valid Answer, Kerncast on Facebook, kerncast.com. And until next time, I'm Scott.
and I'm Marshall.
And we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.